And welcome back to Subculture on EssentialCoastRadio.com. Well, filmmaker Nathan Hill has just made his 10th feature film. It debuted at Monsterfest last year and went pretty well, picking up a couple of awards. And we thought we would actually get Nathan on the phone today to chat a little bit about Lady Terror. Welcome to the program, Nathan.
Thanks so much for having me again, Dave.
Now, mate, we had you on for your last film, I Portrait, and you were talking a little bit about heading into your next project then. Well, then your next project ended up being Lady Terror, which was made in a pretty strange time in the Australian filmmaking landscape. Tell us a little bit about Lady Terror and where the idea first came about for you.
Oh, you're absolutely right, because it was being created and considered to be shot during COVID lockdown, and in Victoria, where I was at the time, there was a little gap. There was about a month or two in between the two major lockdowns, and I decided I'd shoot then, so that if we went back into another lockdown, I had a film to kind of assemble at it, so I wouldn't go mad. I had something to do.
Yeah.
But the idea really sounds funny, but it was inspired by one of my favourite 90s thrillers, which is Blown Away with Corey Haim.
Okay.
And if you go back into my history, I was once slated to do a movie with him, but unfortunately he passed away.
Yeah.
So it kind of stayed with me, and I never really, I never really got over it. I think it always was sort of like a monkey on my back or something.
Yeah.
And so when I made this film, thinking it might, well, not only my 10th, but could even be my last, because the way the world's going, I thought, okay, well, I'll dedicate it to him, which I did. And it was a bit of an homage to the 90s thrillers, particularly, that film. And so that's how I went about it.
When I was watching the film and I saw how Jake first came to the rescue of Candace, I found myself thinking of that case here in Melbourne. You probably remember it, where the guy ran to help the exotic dancer that was being attacked in the city and ended up getting murdered. Was that real life case any basis on what you did?
Yeah, I don't know if that popped up later, but I wasn't aware of it at all, and I'm not just saying that, like I really didn't know about it, but I did hear about that after the fact.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a little bit scary, but I think it's like movies, everything's has already been done, and you're really just trying to reinvent the wheel, or really put your stamp on a project. It's really your voice, but you're taking everything that's already happened. So I think with these thrillers, and I was talking to someone else about this recently, the reason why I like making these movies is because they're mature and they're adult films. They're not superheroes, they're not animated, they're not spoon-fed or sequels or whatnot. They're really dramatic thrillers, and usually these themes, something exactly like that has always happened in real life. But I think that's how you can relate to it, and I always try to put a lot of what's happened to me in my own life into my scripts as well. So you'd be surprised how much of what's in there is kind of semi-autobiographical.
Yep. Okay, so you mentioned that you filmed this during the actual like the break-in lockdowns, and that you weren't sure what was going to happen after that. Did that put any pressure on you when you were actually filming the film? Did you feel the pressure of, we need to get this done in case we get into another lockdown? Or what was that feeling for you while you were filming?
That's a great question. I guess my crew and I know how I work, and because I shot that one at least with Dio Taylor, who's been a DOP with me on several projects, so we're in a bit of a groove. And I had some of my old school reliable actors like Trisha DeVisha and Samay Argento, so they kind of know how to roll with me. So I was pretty confident that I would smash it out in the time frame. But funnily enough, afterwards, I actually was in a position where I didn't have a pre-distribution deal, and I thought this film may never actually get released. I mean, it probably would. I mean, there are certain platforms like Ozflix where you can add your film pretty quickly and easily. But as far as a kind of global, powerhouse distro that I'm used to, it was a bit of a question mark.
Yep. Okay, so going back to what you said now about there's always a little bit of an autobiographical story in your films. Tell us a little bit about Jake. Are there any elements of Jake from your own life?
Jake himself, probably not, because he's a lawyer, and that's probably, as far away from any of the professions I've ever had. But my best friend is a lawyer, or had studied law, Nick Levy, and he's long-term screenwriting partner as well. So I was able to kind of lean on him when I needed to get the technicalities. So he probably acted more as a technical advisor on this one.
Yep.
But it's more about the relations. It's more about how sinister, some people can be, the love triangle, the deception, and what goes with a lot of the film industry. I'm sad to say, a lot of vanity, a lot of stabbing in the back. It's great, and I love art, and I love film, and I've been doing it all my life. But I can't really ignore the fact that there is a darker side to filmmaking as well.
Yeah.
And there's a darker side to the arts and people trying to get ahead of each other. A film that I really resonated with recently that I watched was The Neon Demon.
Yep.
Where you had the three models all trying to kind of fight for the top slot, and as they would go as far as to murder somebody just to get fame. And that throws back to my film model behavior that really got me, on the map, 10 years ago, which was the slogan, everybody wants to be famous. And it was the same thing. I mean, I worked with those themes, long before. So I guess my films and my writing and my genre is all kind of bathed in this topic, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Now, you, of course, as we said, you played Jake in this film. Tell us a little bit about how you went casting the roles around you, because you've put together an amazing cast here. So how did you go about casting, and how did you know that you had the right people?
Great question. I kind of went back to Basic Instinct, which is one of my favorite films. And what I noticed about Basic Instinct was that Michael Douglas, he was in pretty good shape for the time. Like, he's never really been a model type, he's a genuine actor type, but he was in probably the best shape of his life.
Yeah.
But the cast that surrounded him had to be very specific to make it work, particularly when you're working in, borderline erotic thrillers. I mean, you're expecting to get, some really good-looking people as well as some reality. So it was very, very tricky, and I had to, I guess, kind of walk carefully. But it's a balancing act because, the character of Candace Knight, she has to be attractive. She has to be a femme fatale. If he doesn't fall head over heels for her, there is absolutely no way that he's going to commit murder for her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I guess to answer the question, the audition process was just so important and so vital, and I really had to, go into lengthy interviews with each of the cast members to not only explain what I was trying to, the vision I was trying to enact, but were they comfortable and could they pull it off? I mean, I got really lucky with Felida because she was at a time where she was wanting to explore her sexuality on screen. Whilst we were shooting Lady Terror, it was coinciding with another film where she was in a lesbian love relationship. So she was absolutely ideal. She just kind of appeared, and that's the magic of film. Sometimes when you make movies, you are looking for these magic moments where the character just appears.
Yep.
And I would say, in my experiences, I've been very lucky. 99% of the time, that's happened. But for some filmmakers, it doesn't happen. So when she appeared, I was, kind of thank God, particularly in that scary lockdown period that we were talking about. And she wasn't even in Melbourne at the time either. I think she was in Canberra. So, I was very lucky.
Definitely. Now, you, like me, seem to have a love for 90s thrillers. Tell us a little bit about where that love came from.
I think it's probably just one of those things where, when you grow up and film's having an effect on you, I guess whatever you're looking at, you're kind of stuck with it in a sense. So I was talking to someone else recently about a Van Damme fan who said, look, when I grew up, they were the movies that they stuck me in front of the TV of, and, he became obsessed. And I said, well, it could have been anything. I mean, it could have been, bloody Tom Cruise. It could have been a Johnny Depp movie. It could have been an anime. Like you just don't know. So I think when I got a passion for film, and as a teenager, these movies were just totally available. And
Yep.
In those days as well, there were more films being made, and there was just more money. I mean, the economy, globally was in a much healthier position. There were so many films being made, you couldn't even get time to watch all of them.
Yep.
And so I think that's probably why that genre has stuck with me for so long. I think what I like is I like real heroes.
Yep.
I like to think that a person can be a hero. It's not only good for our consciousness, but it's good for young men to have those heroes to aspire to. It's good for women to know sometimes as well that not all men are bad, and it's just nice to know that supernatural or amazing things can happen in life. And it throws back to one of my favourite kind of, I guess, more recent films, Drive, with Ryan Gosling.
Yep.
I absolutely adore that film, and it's because he's playing a real hero.
Yep. I still remember watching Basic Instinct for the first time. My friends and I had found out a way that you could get into films underage at a cinema that was near us. You'd buy a ticket to a kids' film, and then look on their cleaning roster, which was on the wall, and you'd be able to see which adult films were being shown. We remember we snuck in to see Basic Instinct, and I think we were all pretty scared to get into relationships after that, because we're only about 13 years old. So, but and they stick with you, don't they? Like, did you find that too? That those films, when you watch them as a teenager, you still remember them to today, whereas a lot of the superhero movies you watch today, you've forgotten them by the time the credits come around.
Yeah, and I think, what else, man? That was an awesome story, by the way. I think the other thing, it was brilliant. The other thing, I think, is the music. The music plays such a big part because, there's not many soundtracks now that will actually grab me, whereas back in the day, soundtracks were just as important as the film. So, you'd go out and you'd buy the film and you'd buy the soundtrack. And the Basic Instinct soundtrack, for example, I mean, I've listened to it, I don't know how many times, particularly when I'm writing, because I love to write to atmospheric, non-vocal music, so instrumental, and that just had such a haunting score. So, like, when I think about Basic Instinct, I just immediately think of that score, and it just kind of stays with you. And I've listened to it on repeat, so many times, particularly when I'm writing. So I think music played a big part, which is also why these films stay with you for so long.
Awesome. Now, Nathan, of course, the big question is, where can people watch Lady Terror? I know a lot of our listeners out there love Australian cinema. They're going to want to watch the film, so where can they watch Lady Terror?
Man, right now you can see it on Microsoft, Google Play, Apple TV, Prime, and even YouTube Movies.
Awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. What next from you? Have you got any plans for your next film now?
Buddy, I can tell you right now, I can't say too much, but I do have one in the works.
Awesome. Okay. Well, there you go, listeners. Go out and check out Lady Terror. Nathan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute honour having you on the show, and we can't wait to have you on for your next film as well.
Fantastic, man. I appreciate it, and all the best.